That raises the fundamental question that I think Quakers Fostering Justice asks again and again, which is this person incarcerated for a reason of safety or solely to punish? Yeah. The place I want to go to now is not to leave everyone with despair, but instead to talk more hopefully about what we are doing and what we can do, what we can ask for and support. And one of the things that I am seeing increasingly across the country is community chaplaincy agencies, often run by faith communities of some description, sometimes ecumenical, sometimes multi-faith, sometimes from one faith tradition, who receive a small contract. And I can tell you, it's true that I can tell you that if corrections will give these agencies $1, they can do the work of what $10 does in corrections. It's been well documented. So they're very good use of very little money. And they are doing things like palliative care release. So the person is on the street, but they're staying in a care home to palliate while they die. They're doing long-term group home situations that allow people with developmental delay or mental illness or dual diagnosis plus addiction to be again in the community, but within a safe community of support that will, and there's not a plan to move them out. This is their home. It's not like this is a graduated release and we will eventually get you in an apartment of your own downtown. This is what they are released to, and they will be supported. And that seems to work. It seems to be very positive and helpful. And I think that there's a model that is across Canada, well, across the world now, that was developed in Canada called Circles of Support and Accountability. And what happens in Circles of Support and Accountability is that you have the primary client in the middle, and then beyond that person, you have a circle of volunteers, and then beyond them you have a secondary circle. And so this secondary would be support. And so what happens is that when this person is going to be released into the community, either at the end of their sentence or after a lengthy sentence, originally it was for sexual offenses, but more and more we're seeing this expanded beyond just the sexual offender. They approach Circles of Support and Accountability, who then will put together for them a circle of people who volunteer to be in relationship with that person until they're not in relationship anymore. It's not like a 3-month commitment or a 6-month. Many circles have been going 8 or 10 years. And yes, people move and stop volunteering, but there is a commitment level to volunteer. And these volunteers meet with this person while they're in prison and as they reintegrate to help them with pieces like how do you set up your phone, and very practical, where do you shop, but also come up with an agreement around how well do you know your offense pattern, and what do you know are going to be your triggers, and what are you doing to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a place of vulnerability, and if you are, that you're paying attention to that and stepping back and being accountable. So that's the accountability piece. But it's kind of, I always like to say it's capital S support and small a accountability. Really the primary goal is to help this person be in community in a good way. And so they are supported by the secondary support, which would be a parole officer, or maybe a psychologist, perhaps a counselor. There might be people from NA or AA or other help groups in the outer circle that are resource people that can come in and inform this group of volunteers who are surrounding this person. And when the person first gets out, they may meet with them daily. And it may look like going over for dinner. I mean, it doesn't always have to be, a formal kind of, but they'll ask the question, so you were a half hour late today, why was that? Oh, well, I took a walk by the river. Oh, and what did you do? Well, I was sitting on a bench. That wouldn't be the bench near the park, would it? Because you're not supposed to be near parks. So they know them intimately enough to know what are the questions we need to ask to keep the community safe and to keep you safe. right, from the community. And so these kinds of models, there's now, I think, 18 agencies in Canada who are now receiving for the first time federal funding, because while this has been well documented to be effective and productive, it's never received government funding. There's this wealth of skill and experience and quality of work that has emerged in Canada over restorative justice that I think is wonderful. And one of those pieces is that for those who have serious federal time, they can access a program called Serious Violent Offense Mediation that has nothing to do with making parole or doing their program. It has to be totally outside of it. It's run by an external agency which does receive some corrections funding, which will help them to, in whatever way makes sense to the people most affected by the crime, have some kind of a conversation about reconciliation. If you asked most academics what is the one piece of intervention we can offer that will reduce reoffending, reduce victims, right? The answer is education, right? Beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's the one intervention that always helps. And in the 70s, we had I think, the best in the world prison education system in British Columbia. Stephen Duguid out of SFU and other people, Michael Jackson out of UBC, ran this amazing prison ed program where prisoners could take university-based courses inside for free. And Randy White heard about it and said, my daughter has to pay to go to university? That's ridiculous. And with that statement, it was gone. And that's tragic. So, yes, people get GED or equivalency education. You can always access high school education. And I would say that the support for that is very good. If you have difficulty with literacy, with print management, style of learning, there are gifted educators inside who will help you with those struggles. But the only people who can access advanced education have the money to do correspondence courses. That's all that's available to you. I have a colleague who often says, if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And I think if the only tool we have is more punishment, every bad thing that happens in our community, we want to punish harder. But a hammer's only one tool. And there's lots of other things. It's very hard to break a piece of wood with a hammer. And so if we can talk about some of the alternative responses that exist that are of value, like restorative approaches or circles of support and accountability. And we're talking more and more now about starting circles of support, just support, for victims of crime. How do we support people who've been harmed by crime who do or don't want to engage with the legal system? That's up to them, but the primary focus would be to support those victims in a way where they get to call the shots and they get to say, this is what I need right now. So that's one piece. I think really saying we need to have the desire to deal with the underlying social issues. One way you can increase the crime rates tomorrow is to hire more police. If you have more people watching for laws broken, you will have more laws broken. I mean, there's not more laws broken, but there's more people being caught. But if we instead said, for this generation, we're willing to double spend, and yes, we'll deal with the harms that exist because for 40 years we haven't done things very well, but for the next period of time, we're going to deal with social injustice, poverty, addictions, health issues, mental health issues, all of those social issues more productively, and we're going to double spend over there for a while because we know the payoff in 20 years is going to be massive. Not just in money saved, but in people being hurt. We will hurt less people if we can help people over here who are struggling. And so, I think that's the other piece is what is the legislation that will support these kinds of supportive interactions with people.